Yes, you read it right. This is a video on the cartoon community. Sit down, it's not that kind of video. A lot of people have done that kind of video already, talking about the same old with next to no substance to them. So people lambasting Christina Miller for being the death of Cartoon Network, citing her as the cause of the lackluster scheduling even though that's so not true, the gross overplaying of Teen Titans Go on Cartoon Network, the commonly mentioned problems of the more notable figures within the community, all that stuff. And for me to jump into the bandwagon and just cover those topics willy-nilly would be quite redundant. On that note, if you are expecting that kind of content from this particular video, I'm telling you right now, this might not be the place for you. This video is going to be a different kind of beast. I might be touching on those individual facets throughout the course of the video, one way or another, but I won't be focusing on one facet exclusively. This will be more of an attempt to connect the dots, so to speak, and discern what makes this equally loved and equally hated community tick. This video will be more for the outsiders who love cartoons as much as the next person does and is remotely curious about the community, but can't really figure out how to navigate through it or just have reservations about it. In a sense, you might see this video as a primer or a compendium, though if you've been in the community long enough, you're still welcome to watch. Still, even with this disclaimer, I predict at least one person will misconstrue this video as just like every other. I don't know, but I guess the only way to know is by taking a headfirst plunge. If you are indeed new to the community, you've most likely seen a number of accusations lobbied against it. These accusations include self-entitlement, vocal and textual outspokenness, emotional sensitivity, and my absolute favorite, hostility amongst each other for the pettiest of reasons. I find it quite unfair for the community as a whole to be considered any of these things, but I can't deny that these problems do exist and are more common than I'd like them to be. But let me see if I can disrobe this nonsense and make, well, sense of it, for lack of a better term. First of all, there is no nobility in hostility between members of a collective group. Absolutely not. It is indeed petty how relationships can be fractured on the basis of the common ground that brought these people together in the first place. However, in spite of this, I can see even the smallest shred of nobility in such extremism from cartoon fans. Yes, I really do mean it. Having wandered many reaches of the internet in my lifetime, I'm no stranger to the vocal minority and their insistence on certain things to adhere to certain standards. My news feeds on literally every social media platform I'm on tend to contain at least one kind of post with some social, political, or socio-political rhetoric behind it, and the palette of emotions that reinforces these posts range from genuine yet rational concern to impassioned yet irrational outrage. As you can imagine, like with any other discourse, this one is used in any context, including, you guessed it, cartoons. More so than ever, the medium has become an outlet through which a person may push their ideals in subtle or not so subtle ways. While cartoons always had that potential, this commentary was usually delegated to adult animation, at least in the more straightforward sense. Nowadays, I seem to have noticed a growing surge in such commentary appearing in cartoons for more diverse demographics, and so the cartoons in question resonate even more with their audience, especially those who find a specific commentary to be pertinent to their individual circumstances. These people are given a voice, a mouthpiece, when they otherwise have none or are powerless to use their own voices. Must be a symptom of our predominantly liberal society. Candor begets candor, so to speak. Thus, one can at least empathize with these people of these splintered and minority groups. Because representation in the media has so much weight behind it, there will be that fraction of an audience that's going to either praise or lambast the way their idiosyncrasies are depicted in these media, the media that many people consume. If they notice even the tiniest oversight in the depiction of the idiosyncrasy in question, they will speak out on it. For instance, if a homosexual person is portrayed with an exaggerated degree of flamboyancy, a stereotype of homosexuality that has largely been outgrown as of today, that's a surefire way to spark outrage from members of a deviant sexual or gender persuasion. It's only natural that people become as incensed and vocal as they get. They want their idiosyncratic groups to be depicted as clearly and accurately as possible. It's also natural that people become incensed and vocal from an artistic standpoint. In its 100+ year history, animation has undergone a tremendous evolution. With each successive generation and new forms of technology brought to the forefront, there too have been more and more creative ways to push the boundaries, and in turn, these new methods give way to higher standards within the industry, from both consumer and creator alike. The evolution of animation is akin to that of video games, if you ask me. They're similar in the sense that they initially started as pastimes intended for and enjoyed more by children, but over time have grown in credibility to the point where even non-devotees are taking them more seriously. The only difference here is the lengthy history of animation, which I already mentioned is over 100 years old, going back to the early 19th century before film was even a thing. That's in stark contrast to the comparably shorter 47-year history of video games. Depending on your perspective of it, it's either triumphant or tragic. Going back to the bigger picture at hand, because of how far animation has come, people will speak out against visually offensive travesties while glorifying the artistically acute. If you are around between 2011 and 2013, you're most likely aware of The Problem Solvers, a prime example of this. That show was thrashed on different fronts, between being an eye-killing abomination and the possibility of replacing a hot commodity around the same time, Genndy Tartakovsky's Symbionic Titan. That last one is kind of tenuous, but the complaints about the show's artistry, or lack thereof, are well-founded and unanimous. That being said, it's not to say that the people within the community can't and don't channel their love for animation positively. You will find no shortage of people who discuss animation-related topics at great length without any trace of vitriol, and that kind of impartiality and openness fosters an enriching and welcoming environment. An environment where perspectives are widened, new knowledge is acquired, and camaraderie is forged. This kind of commitment also works both ways. Because animation has progressed this far, it gives its audience an incentive to be fully defensive of the craft. When faced with some kind of criticism for their passion, animation fans counter by raising the aforementioned points as to why they enjoy it the way they do. Some fans do so excessively, stooping to childish lows like retaliating with equally hurtful or even more hurtful slurs, while others take the opportunity to engage in a debate. Both approaches attest the fierce devotion of these fans, set apart in that one approach is destructive and counterintuitive, while the other is constructive and beneficial to the cause. And that's the cartoon community in a nutshell. A group of individuals who are driven to do what they do by a collective love for everything animation. Individuals who treat the craft, the industry, and the creators who practice the craft with due diligence and respect. By all accounts, the thought of fully grown men and women taking such a seemingly juvenile thing so seriously can be scary. I get that. I get that there's a bit of a social stigma for this, no different from the stigmas put in place for fanatics of any kind of hobby. Yes, this is true, but rest assured, by and large, the favor we have for animation comes from a sincere and heartfelt place. I could stop there, but there's one more thing to take care of. I want to do something unprecedented, at least for my standards. This is the part of the video where I go as in-depth as possible into the commentary/reviewing side of the community, assuming you don't kill me first. I'm going to momentarily paraphrase a statement made by Brian Zane of Wrestling with Regret. Brian described the content creator profession as an extension of the internet's foundation for discussion and acquisition of knowledge, and I have to agree with him. YouTubers, especially those who specialize in criticism and commentary, take a lot of what the internet is built on and escalate them to another level. The discussion aspect still exists in the form of the YouTube comment section for all the ill will that cesspool produces, except this time it's initiated by a person speaking through a microphone or in front of a camera. And because that person is taking a stand, making their opinions known on a grand scale and demonstrating a degree of expertise on the subject, they become an influential figure within the community. Sometimes, it even reaches a point where their word is taken as gospel. Sometimes, not all the time. And wouldn't you know it, reviewing cartoons has become something of a trend, an art form. Because of the environment that the community has fostered, more and more content creators have emerged in recent times, with a varying range of success. A good number of them are entertaining and rightfully successful. Some not so much. But this ain't a roast video. Instead, I'm just gonna give brief yet detailed summaries on a handful of these cartoon reviewers. Let me preface this part by saying that no cartoon reviewer is identical to another. There are a number of aspects that set apart one reviewer from another. Their editing style, their personality, and their focus. I'll explain what these content creators are all about, and from there you can discern which of these people are your cup of tea. Not everyone is gonna enjoy every content creator here. It's all a matter of preference. We're gonna go in the following order. I'm gonna start with the quote-unquote starter pack. These are the entry points, so to speak, into the reviewing section of the community and the community as a whole. Their styles have both a casual and devoted audience in mind, and they're well-established names within the community. And after that, I'm gonna go into smaller and less familiar names that deserve a mention. Without further ado, let's get cracking. One of the pioneers of cartoon reviews and a bona fide household name. Don't let the name throw you off. Rebel Taxi is the name of a cartoon reviewing web show and not the creator himself. That would be Pan Pizza, the driver of the Rebel Taxi. The channel is primarily about animation. Animated TV series, animated films, it's all here. But every now and then there's a non-animation review around the corner. Oh, and he also has a podcast, the Pizza Party Podcast, featuring Pan Pizza himself and a motley crew of friends and guest stars. Rebel Taxi and Pan Pizza's theme is that of a taxicab, in case you didn't already get it. A futuristic taxicab driven by an insightful and knowledgeable man who might or might not be clinically insane, evident in his deadpan deliveries and eyebrow-raising choice of words. For the love of God, please don't bring up Teen Titans Raven in his presence, you're just gonna drive him crazy. But that bit about possible clinical illness is more for Pan's character and not specifically him as a person in real life. Creation and creator are not always the same thing. While I'm at it, good luck trying to figure out his true identity because he's quite the recluse. Not really a hermit, but he values his solitude. The off-bandied animation equivalent of WatchMojo.com, and for good reason. The name of the game for Australian native Phantom Strider is Top 10 Countdowns, with a majority of them centered on cartoon-related topics. I say majority because like Rebel Taxi and Pan Pizza, he has the occasional non-cartoon video. And as we all know, Top 10 Countdowns are one of the best ways to rope in an audience because of their vast appeal even for YouTube standards. The topics that Strider covers range from basic and general to bizarrely specific. I can't believe he actually went out of his way to find the best and worst cartoons from a country like Ireland. Talk about going the extra mile. No pun intended. So expect very generalized explanations in his videos. Come to think of it, nothing about Strider is overly complex, but that's what makes him a good entry point for casuals. Phantom Strider has two channels, his main channel and a secondary channel called Live Strider. The latter has a bigger variety of videos and is thus the more casual of the two. He even did a charity livestream where he ran 26 miles on a treadmill. I gotta hand it to the guy. He's got quite the stamina. I wonder how he'd do on Dance Dance Revolution. Maybe he'd do pretty well. I'm bunching these two together because they're kind of identical, at least to me. Stufflift Scoutfly and Veilsky Bum 94. Why do I say they're identical? That's because they're not so much reviewers as they are news reporters, delivering the latest scoop in animation fresh out of the oven. Veilsky Bum, or Veil, has even gone on record admitting that he's not really a reviewer and more of a reporter. When any fascinating recent developments occur in the industry, you can count on these two to explain the situation and give their input into said situation. With professional and pretty production values, hold on, I want to see if I can say this fast as many times as possible. Professional and pretty production, professional... I can't even make it past 2. Sorry. As I was trying to say, with professional and pretty production values and uncomplicated content that doesn't need extensive deciphering, Scoutfly and Veil are a solid segue into the community that are easy enough on both the eyes and the ears. Although some people have taken umbrage with Veil's voice, but to each their own. Personally, they're not my cup of tea. I actually find them somewhat redundant because we have places like toonzone.net and Cartoon Brew, and even if we don't use them, we still have Google. But these guys have cultivated something that works, and I can't take that away from them. They've cultivated a market for animation journalism, and a lot of people seem to be buying into that. I'm not one of those people, but hey, if it works, it works. Like the above two, these three are bundled together because they share a similar purpose. The Roundtable, Cartoon Universe, and Pie Guy Rules are the definition of YouTube being an extension of the internet's foundation for discussion. They do bring out the latest animation news, but not to the same degree as Veil and Scout. The Roundtable and Cartoon Universe focus on episode discussions for the more story and plot-driven series, like Steven Universe and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, coming up with all sorts of theories and speculations for those series. And being another pioneer of animation critique, Pie Guy Rules started as a specialist for Nickelodeon, primarily SpongeBob SquarePants, but he has a wealth of content to accommodate anyone's needs, and not just of the animation variety. And it helps that these three have respectable production values. The general lack of episode clips in their videos might make them stale, but it works to their advantage in that they don't have to worry about the woefully broken copyright system of YouTube. The Roundtable and Cartoon Universe are personally not my cup of tea either, mainly because their coverage of other shows that aren't SU or Star seems to be when those other shows are making headlines and nothing more, but what they have works, and that's the most important thing. And I would have otherwise labeled Pie Guy as a niche reviewer, but the variety in his content places him squarely in this category. Wait, did I just make another pun? I swear to God, I did not mean for that to happen. the mysterious Mr. Enter, aka Jonathan Rosansky, the cornerstone of the reviewing side of the community. Equally loved and equally hated, like the community itself. It would be a gross understatement to say that he's built himself a reputation over his 4-year career. This is the name that you will see crop up everywhere in the community, and for a damn good reason. Well, more than one reason. He's a very knowledgeable individual when it comes to animation and is the very definition of substance over style. What he lacks in his editing and overall presentation, he makes up for it with the most acute insight, shedding light on aspects that one might not even consider. Because of his insight and respect for animation, you can expect from him a refined taste. Not a strict taste, a refined yet still open-ended taste. You can also expect his commentary to be somewhat emotionally charged at times, particularly when discussing shows that have impacted him on a personal level. It could invite accusations of him being biased, but you can be assured that he does his damnedest to remain impartial in his critique. In case you're unaware of it, Mr. Enter is a magnet for controversy. People are quick to bring up the aforementioned points when they say that they dislike him both as a critic and as a person. They're quick to bring up his editing or lack thereof, his emotionally charged commentary, his unfounded vendetta against cartoon screenwriters, his disrespect for other people's opinions, and his supposedly volatile personality in general, which subsequently creates an uncomfortable atmosphere to be in. While I'm not as huge on Mr. Enter as I used to be, I and many others can easily refute these criticisms. Those points about his poor editing, his emotionally charged commentary, his disrespect and vendetta are mistakes that Enter himself has acknowledged and rectified over the years. Yes, he is guilty of these, but over time, he stepped up in his critique, does not attack cartoon writers anymore, and he's even gone out of his way to hire an editor to pretty up his videos. Now look, I keep saying that first impressions are important, but there comes a time where you just have to overcome those first impressions, especially when the subject of these criticisms is working to better themselves. People are not going to remain the same thing for an extended period of time. You and I were more prone to change than you might think, sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. And in this case, I say Enter falls into the latter category. It only seems like a person hasn't changed at all, when in reality they're merely adhering to a style that they've found, a style that they've perfected over trial and error that continue to refine day in and day out. When you give the mysterious Mr. Enter and any of these reviewers for that matter a look-see, yes, you are free to form your first impressions, but I implore you to eventually look past those first impressions and towards the bigger picture. As an aside, Mr. Enter, John, you have my condolences. I may not be as big an online presence as you or will ever hope to be, but as a content creator myself, I very well understand the pain you're going through, and I can't deny that you're something of an influence on me, as far as thinking critically goes, and I'll always respect that. The most I can say is, no matter what you're going through, never forget that you have a fan base who will stay fiercely loyal to you until the very end. That's what a community is for, right? The next few reviewers are much smaller than the aforementioned 8. These are the quote-unquote new generation of animation critics, all of whom have a steadily growing following and show a wealth of promise. Reasons for their smaller profiles include their more in-depth content that takes a bit of time for casual fans to digest, their niche focuses which cater to a specific section of the community, or even both. Do note that because these reviewers are so specialized, it's going to require a bit more prior knowledge to truly appreciate them. But don't let that discourage you from giving them a look. They are well worth your time. We're kicking off this section with a good friend of mine, Alpha J of The Alpha J Show. No, this isn't nepotism, just sit down and listen. An up-and-coming name in animation critique, Alpha J is one of the most insightful individuals I've had the pleasure of knowing. I'd even say that his insight is on the same league as Mr. Enter's, and I'm not joking. With the use of that insight, he's bound to open up one's perspective on an episode or an entire show by elaborating on his own perspective. In terms of his content, Jay is one to go the extra mile, going beyond just the standard episode and series reviews. Several of his videos involve how he would rewrite a mediocre or terrible episode of a show, character and episode comparisons, and whether or not he would reboot certain shows. A personal favorite of mine is his The Shell vs. the Matchmaker video, not just because it's about 2 episodes from that Blue Cat show I keep gushing about. What was it called again? I think it was something like bubblegum or chewing gum or baseball or softball or basketball. What was it? Alpha J opened his channel on August 5, 2015 and currently sits at around 36,000 subscribers. If fresh new perspectives are what you're all about, Jay's the panda for you. This handsome fellow is among the older of this generation's critics, being born in 1992 alongside myself. As a famous quote beautifully puts it, with age comes wisdom. That is Gem Reviews in a nutshell. Much of his content is centered on animated series from the late 90s and early 2000s. From episode reviews to season reviews to top 10 countdowns, Gem has a little something for everyone. His main flavors are Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Fox, and Comedy Central. Naturally, because some of the shows he covers belong to the two most infamous and stingiest corporations regarding copyright, his channel is more prone to claims, strikes, and takedowns. Gem joined the YouTube family on April 12, 2015, and his subscriber count clocks in at around 21,000. If you want someone with a nostalgic touch, look no further than Gem Reviews. You might think that Nintendo is a portmanteau of Nickelodeon and Nintendo, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. His name is Nick, and he loves Nintendo. You can put two and two together. I'd be lying if I said it didn't throw me off the first time around. One of the younger critics on YouTube, Nintendo's age belies a true animation fanatic. Seasonal reviews, series reviews, animated film reviews, you name it. In regards to his persona, his enthusiasm makes his content inviting, helped by the dosage of memes present in his videos. He's more of a meme lord than I will ever be, that's for sure. Having joined in July 19, 2015 and having amassed well over 18,000 subscribers, Nintendo is one who lives and breathes by animation and the internet, and so is worth your attention. These England-based gentlemen, Torcheap and Blue Artisan, have animation written all over them as much as the next person does. Let's start with Torcheap. Initially starting off with countdown videos, he's since expanded his reach to reviews, news coverage, and vlogs. His thorough commentary separates him from other similar creators, so expect a bit more substance here than usual. Oh, and there's also the occasional meme video here and there. Just don't confuse him for a Phantom Strider knockoff. They're from two different countries after all. I say the best way to get on his good side is to give him a limited edition Android 18 or BoJack Horseman Funko Pop or something to that effect. As for Blue Artisan, he's among the older content creators of this generation and by the relevant standards is severely underrated. His content is incredibly engrossing, going at length to elaborate on topics that are fascinating and only a very small amount of people know about. I had no idea about half of the shows in his top 10 cartoon outros countdown. Goes to show that wisdom really does come with age. He seldomly uploads. His last video was uploaded sometime around June, but when he does, you get so much out of it. I say the wealth of information you gain is 5 times the video's length. He's that damn good. Torcheap and Blue Artisan joined YouTube on September, roughly a year apart from each other, the former joining in 2015 and the latter in 2016. Torcheap has accrued over 7,000 subscribers due in no small part to his worst adult cartoons countdown achieving virality, while Blue Artisan sits at a little over 200 subscribers. If you want something enriching and oozing with class, look no further. The last content creator I would like to give a shout out to is one of the closest friends I've ever known and a truly remarkable person, the almighty edgelord Shadowstreak. I will vouch for him until the day I die. What can you expect from Shadowstreak? As you can tell from his avatar, the man is one of the biggest fanatics of the Powerpuff Girls. I thought I loved the show to death, but his adoration is on a completely different level. And with that adoration, he provides his bread and butter, coverage of the 2016 reboot. I will give him credit for having greater willpower than I ever can to sit through the show. It's easy and trendy to give the reboot a rightful thrashing with little to no substance to it, but Shadow goes the extra mile and describes the inner workings of an episode to ascertain why it is what it is. On that tangent, even though Shadow is largely against the reboot, it's not to say that he easily discards it just like that. He still maintains professionalism and impartiality throughout his critique, acknowledging the reboot's few bright spots in addition to its many flaws. On top of his reboot reviews, he also has a handful of impressions videos, his most notable being his coverage of the 5th season of Samurai Jack. Oh, and did I mention that he and I collaborated at one point? It was a pleasure and an honor working alongside him. Personality-wise, though he claims to be an edgelord in name only, that is so not true. He totally is. I mean, just look at him, and just look at his six-sided ruler. If that kind of profile picture and avatar don't spell edgy, I don't know what will. Shadowstreak began his career as a content creator on March 11, 2016, and has garnered a following of over 8,000 subscribers. You want sugar, spice, everything nice and edge? This is the edgelord for you. I don't suppose I need to explain it, but I, the one and only CR Martin, am also an animation critic. What you see with me is what you get. I have adored animation ever since I was a wee Filipino boy, and like my contemporaries, I provide the critique that I do out of an admiration and respect for the craft. I critique so that the craft may continue to grow, and to also learn something for myself in the hopes of practicing this craft in the future. I keep the scope of my coverage wide and varied enough, but my current focus is the amazing world of Gumball, one of my favorite animated series of all time and a widely overlooked series. My presentation style is calmer than that of my contemporaries. Though I love my share of memes, I am not a meme lord, and I certainly ain't an edgelord too. I present myself the way I do to create an inviting environment for any audience, though I might have some screws loose. Why else would I be swearing like a sailor? And also like my contemporaries, though I've found a style that I'm comfortable with, I'm always keen to improve. Matter of fact, I'm keen to improve in general, really. And here's to all my fellow critics, may we continue to grow both as creators and as people. That wraps up my take on the cartoon community. It's about time that someone spoke on the matter from a more neutral position. I understand the points and purposes of Mars Reviews, the man who kicked off this sudden trend of rants regarding the community, and I always appreciate such vocal outspokenness, but that one video caused an influx of such negative energy within the community that paints it in a terrible light. I'm gonna play the role of devil's advocate again and say that this was far from what Mars intended. I really doubt that he had a long-term plan in mind when he made that video. A long-term plan that involves one of the premier cartoon critics having an awful yet thankfully short bout of depression. And I wouldn't say that the video itself is inherently toxic, it's just that it was a precursor for such toxicity. And I just couldn't sit idly by and watch this community implode from within. I put this video together both as a critic and as a human being, which is what we all are. I know this community can be good. The friends I've made in the community attest that, and I don't want to see that collapse. It might be too much of me to ask for the infighting to disappear in the snap of a finger, but the least I can say to everyone watching is to remember what brought you together in the first place. And to all you newcomers watching, imperfections and all, the cartoon community is a truly wonderful place to be in. Ironically, what makes it scary is also what makes it wonderful. People of different walks of life coming together because of a unified interest. It's not possible to achieve complete harmony, but the best we can do is to try and come close to it as much as we can. We all love cartoons, and we're also human beings. Let's not lose sight of that. That should be it for the video. I'm the one and only CR Martin telling you to never let your love for animation work against you and instead work for everyone, including yourself. Ciao for now.